Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be filming my labor and delivery story with our twins that we just had 2.5 weeks ago. Life has just been so surreal. I mean, everything has just been so good since having them both home. It's just amazing, and it's everything. Like right now, life is just everything. I'm just like on that new mother like high, I think, running on like adrenaline and a little bit of sleep. So yeah, if you're new to my channel, then yeah, we just had twins, boy-girl twins, and we conceived via in vitro. And yeah, I'm here to tell you guys our labor and delivery story because it is pretty wild, and I do have our birth, labor, and delivery vlog, so I'll have that link down below for you guys. If you have not seen that yet, go ahead and check that out, and let's go ahead and get into the video. So I will go ahead and just start from the beginning and tell you guys that I did not know I was actually in labor. And I'm sure you guys are wondering how that's possible, but considering we went into preterm labor twice. So it is possible to not know that you're in labor, apparently. And I am not a first-time mom, so I thought that would never happen, but it happened to me. So I went in the day that I was 36 and 4 for my OB appointment, had my normal ultrasound, saw my doctor, and the week before my cervix was about 3.5 centimeters, and I had been at that since I was 28 weeks. So we're talking 8 weeks of being over 3 centimeters. So I wasn't really concerned that I was going to go in and be like anything more than that, because it had been the same the whole time. That morning I was having contractions, and typically I was having Braxton Hicks more towards the afternoon, like after lunchtime. And that morning I was having them in the morning. I've been having them pretty frequently for like the past day or two before that. But again, nothing intense, nothing where I thought I'm in labor. And with preterm labor, I knew both times that I was contracting enough for it to be like almost active labor. And this time it was not like that whatsoever, and I was just kind of letting it go because I figured when the time actually came I would be well aware. So anyways, I went into my appointment with my doctor, and we just talked about how, you know, labor was getting close. Am I still having contractions? And then he went ahead and did a cervix check, and while he was doing the cervix check, he's like, "Are you having a contraction right now?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm just having one of those, you know, fake contractions." And he's like, "What were you on Friday?" Because I was seen on a Tuesday, and 4 days before I was 3.5 centimeters. So it was 4 days later. And he said, "Well, you're at 5 centimeters right now. So if you're at 5 centimeters and contracting, I want you to go down to labor and delivery and make sure that you're not actually in labor right now." And I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm definitely not in labor. These contractions are uncomfortable, but they're not super intense, like active labor contractions. And he's like, "You're going downstairs." And ironically, there was a huge ice storm like coming in to Iowa. And we're like, okay, we need to get home here in a few hours before the storm hits. And he said that it was just better to go downstairs because if I was actually in labor, he didn't want me to leave and then have to drive in the ice storm to get back to the hospital in time, and he did not want me delivering babies on the interstate. So we went downstairs, and we had our 4.5-year-old daughter with us because, like I said, we just thought this was like a typical appointment. And they hooked me up in triage in labor and delivery on the monitors, and of course, like the second they hooked me up, I started to think that I actually was in labor, because it was almost like from the walk of being in OB going downstairs across to the labor and delivery floor, my contractions seemed to like pick up. So I'm not sure if him checking my cervix like irritated my cervix or whatever, but things just started happening. And for those who are going to ask, no, he did not sweep my membranes or anything like that. I don't think he's even allowed to do that early. He just checked and then came out. So I've had my membrane swept before, and I know what it feels like. It is very uncomfortable. So we didn't like secretly do anything in there. He just checked me. And I think maybe him checking me just kind of like revved things up a little bit, because while I was on the monitors, like 30 minutes into it, my husband was like, this is for real. They were coming every 4 to 5 minutes and, you know, just peaking in a perfect pattern. They weren't spacing out anymore or anything like that. And I'm like, crap, I think I'm really in labor. And I still didn't put anything on Instagram because I was worried that if I put it on Instagram that it actually would be real. And I thought that I was ready to go into labor, but then I realized I wasn't ready and I was kind of freaking out. My dad was actually supposed to grab my daughter, but because of the weather, my husband thought that he would just take her. So we were kind of waiting in triage for a while, and my doctor in the office wasn't the one on call, but he did call down and say that he wanted to admit me and that this was real, because the actual doctor on call was in a C-section and he didn't want them to just like be waiting around and then send me home and have me wait for a call to come back. So when they told me they were actually admitting me and that it was real labor, I immediately started to cry. I was just so overwhelmed. You know, we didn't have our bags in the car. We joked about bringing them coming to the appointment, and then we didn't, and big mistake, because it caused my husband to have to leave, not only to take my daughter to the babysitter, but to go home and like put everything in the car. My makeup bag wasn't packed, which isn't a big deal, but I did want just like a little bit of makeup. So so at the time they told me I was in labor, I believe it was 10:30. So my husband left the hospital at 10:30, okay, and the storm was hitting around like 11:30. So he had to drive my daughter 45 minutes away to her babysitter's house, who was going to be taking care of her for 3 days, who's like a really good friend of ours. So he had to not only make an hour-and-a-half round trip drive, he also had to go back to our house, which was 20 minutes in the other direction, and get all of our bags and our stuff. And the whole time they were telling me that I had plenty of time and not to worry. And I honestly wasn't worried because I had been at 3 centimeters so long and I was at a 5. So I'm like, no big deal. So by the time they got me into a room after triage, it was around 11:15. So my husband left at 10:30 and he was gone, okay? So just so you guys know what's going on. So at this point, I'm by myself and my daughter is crying. My 4.5-year-old. My husband's downstairs with the twins and her, so I'm sure he's having a great time. So I got into my room about, like I said, about 11:15, 11:30, and they checked me again and I was at a 5.5. And at this point that they were, they actually had me in the room, he had just gotten on the road to take my daughter down to her babysitter's house. He was like almost there, I think. And the storm was already getting pretty crazy and he was driving more north towards the storm. But they were telling me I still had plenty of time, and my doctor wanted to go ahead and break my water, because this is kind of like weird that he would do that, because naturally that would speed it up, right? But they were still saying that I had plenty of time, and because he was working in the clinic upstairs that day, he was still seeing patients and he was planning on delivering me himself. And so he wanted to come down and break my water to get things going at 12:30 and then come back down whenever it was time to deliver me, because he said that he'd break my water at 12:30 and probably about 5 or 5:30 when clinic was over, he'd be coming down to deliver me. So yeah, I was like all for it, and he said if I wanted to go ahead and get an epidural, I could, and I definitely knew that because I knew going in I was getting one. As soon as your water breaks, the contractions get a lot more rough because there's not that cushion any longer. And because I was by myself without my husband, I didn't want to be writhing in pain with like no one there, and I really just didn't want the nurse to have to give me all the attention. So I went ahead and got the epidural as soon as my water was broken. As the doctor was breaking my water, the anesthesiologist walked in. They planned on coming in at the exact same time, and that's how it happened. Everything went great. The epidural was fine. It was terrible going in. I did not like it going in. Just knowing what's going on back there and knowing what it looks like and feeling it just wasn't for me. And the contractions still at 5 centimeters were never too bad where I couldn't talk through them. And after I had the epidural and I was laying down, I did notice the contractions picking up because I could feel the right side. So they gave me the button, of course, to push for extra epidural, and then they did have me roll over, and I think I had to push the button twice. And then I was numb enough to only feel like a little bit of pressure, but nothing for contractions. So after they gave me the epidural, things got really crazy. They told me they would check me every 2 hours, and if I wasn't progressing any by the first check 2 hours later, they would go ahead and just start a little bit of Pitocin. And so my husband walks in the door about 1:45, and I got or maybe like 1:50. So they broke my water, and I got the epidural around 12:20, 12:30. So it only been like an hour and a half, an hour and 40 minutes. And the nurse was just in there, so she decided just to go ahead and come check me. And when she checked me, I was already at a 10. And my eyes got the size of like sand dollars. They were huge. I could not believe it. I didn't even feel any pressure like I was a 10. Because with my daughter Aniston, who's 4.5, when I was a 10, I knew because I could feel her starting to come out. And I could still feel a little bit of pressure, but nothing compared to like me thinking that I was a 10. We were actually already talking about Pitocin because I said I feel like I'm not really progressing any. And my contractions still were not like 2 minutes apart. They were still like 4 or 5 minutes apart. So I don't know how that happened, but my body was just like ready to get baby A out. And my husband, like, I could not believe that he almost missed it. He'd only been there like maybe 35 minutes, maybe 40 minutes. He had enough time to walk in, bring stuff in, go back down with more stuff, bring it back, go to the bathroom, and they were telling me I was at a 10. And I was just so thankful that he made it, because I would have probably had a stroke. So the original plan was to take me to the OR to deliver around 8 centimeters or 9 centimeters. So when they came in and I was a 10, they were moving pretty quickly. They were kind of shoving stuff at my husband to put on to go in the OR. I had to deliver in the OR because I was having twins. And he was getting dressed, and they were like running around. The nurses were kind of running around. They were trying to get my doctor on the phone and telling him that I'm ready to go. And it was just a nightmare. I was getting overwhelmed. I was just in shock, and I just like couldn't believe. I thought I had like the rest of the day to prepare myself, but no. So they wheeled me to the OR very quickly. I was honestly scared that Winslet was going to come out like on the bed thing, because they were still trying to prep the OR room. And so I think about 10 minutes after they wheeled me out of my room, they were putting me finally in the OR. And let me tell you guys, I would never want to deliver this way again like I did in the OR, because it was so strange to me. I've only ever had like a birth where I'm in a room with a doctor and 2 nurses. When they wheeled me into this OR, there was this random table just sitting in the middle of this huge room, and people were just moving everywhere. The NICU teams were coming in. There was 1 NICU team per baby. There was respiratory therapists for each baby. There was a paramedic. There were 2 anesthesiologists in the room. There were tons of surgical techs everywhere just in case I had to have a C-section. There was 18 people in the room, plus me, plus my husband. So there were 20 people in the room. And when they put me on the bed, my doctor came like in, walking very quickly, and he was trying to stir up the leg holders on the table I was laying on. They were screwing them on so fast, and I'm just laying there like, guys, I'm laughing now, but I was like just shocked. It just was such a blur to me. And I was like, holy crap, I'm about to push out these babies with my legs up in the middle of a room full of a crowd of people. And let me tell you guys, I've taken speech in college. I have never had stage fright like I had laying on that table, knowing I was about to have to like lift up my legs with a line of like techs behind my doctor just like staring back at me, like staring at me like from this direction. It was like borderline humiliating. So pretty much I'm laying on this table, and once they get the stirrups in, they like shut the door, and everyone's just kind of at their stations, and they put my legs up, and at this point I can't really feel the contractions happening. I just feel like a consistent pressure feeling, but again, nothing major. So they were having to tell me when to push because I couldn't tell when I was having a contraction. And so the first contraction that I pushed, they had me push 3 times, and on the third push, Winslet came out. Like, she came out on the third push in the first contraction. And I was like, wow, this is super easy. Like, they're just gonna come out. They must be like pretty small babies. And so they laid her on me, and they let me do the delayed cord clamping. And of course, as soon as I saw her, I just like was a mess. And I'm gonna try not to cry now because it's just very emotional. Like, the second I saw her, like, our journey of like almost 3 years of just like wanting, wishing, hoping, praying for this moment, it was so overwhelming. I was crying all over the place. My eyes were getting black flakes in them from my mascara because I did not plan on giving birth that day, so I had on quite a bit of makeup. And just looking at her, I was just in awe. Like, everything in the room stopped. I was just staring at her crying. It was amazing. And I did notice that she was really, really white. Even though she was crying and doing what she was supposed to do, she was just very, very white. And the anesthesiologist behind me at my head the whole time was like cleaning up my face so I could at least see her, because I was crying so hard that I couldn't really even see what she looked like at that time. And everyone was just so nice and like super sweet. And it was like it was a great team for those who were like at the bedside with me. The 2 nurses and the anesthesiologist, they were just so kind. And after the cord stopped pulsating, they went ahead and cut it, and they said that they had to take her away and put her in the warmer and check on her because she was, you know, really white, and they want them to kind of like pink up. And during the time that they were cutting the cord and taking her, my doctor was taking baby B and trying to get his water and break it. And once he broke his water, he said that he fell down into the canal like the right way, I guess, like as he wanted him to be. Now, he was a different story when he came out. I was this close to thinking that I was going to have a C-section, and I was trying my best not to have one. So while I'm trying to like look over and check, like look at Winslet and make sure that she's okay, my husband's like right beside me taking pictures and trying to like be with Winslet and be with me. I had gone through like 4 or 5 contractions, and he just was not coming out. And I'm like, you know, what's going on? Like, why can't I get him out? Like, she was so easy. Is he just bigger? You know, at this point he was head down, and I was starting to, again, I was kind of still getting stage fright because there were all these eyes just staring back at me. I was getting really uncomfortable and really frustrated because he was not coming out, and I just expected that he would come out easier because she already came through. I thought maybe that he'd have more room to come through or something. As gross as that sounds, I just feel like maybe she would have opened up the area or something. But my doctor ended up looking at me, telling me that I needed to get a vacuum, or he needed to get the vacuum out. And as soon as I kind of like started to tear up, he said that I would still be pushing him out, but that he would have to kind of pull a little bit with the suction just so they can go ahead and get him out. And as soon as he grabbed the vacuum, one of the nurses looked at my doctor and said something about his heart rate. And I was like, okay, I'm getting him out. I'm not going to have a C-section. He needs to be out right now. I've got to find strength somewhere to get him out of me because he needs to come out right now. And the first contraction with the vacuum and me pushing, his head came out, and my doctor said, oh, you're sunny side up. That's why you're not coming out. So he actually came out face up. And that's why I was having a hard time getting him out. And as soon as I looked down and saw his head, I was like, oh, well, hello, nice to meet you. Because normally, you know, they're head down. So if you look down, you're not seeing a face staring back at you. And it was just, again, a beautiful moment, very overwhelming. I'm crying all over the place. And they put him on me, and immediately I knew that he wasn't crying. he was kind of like whimpering and not really letting out those cries that they really want to hear. So they ended up not being able to let his cord stop pulsating all the way. And they're like, my nurse said, you know, we have to take him over there just to, you know, make sure he's fine. We've got to take him now. And so they took him, and then I'm just kind of laying there like not knowing what's going on, because the teams now are surrounding both babies. And my doctor said, you know, everything's great. Let me just, you have a small tear. Let me just go ahead and stitch it up. And luckily I didn't feel any of the stitching, because I did feel like tugging, and that kind of was uncomfortable. It was very like you knew what was going on. So my mom always calls during my videos, you guys, always. It was just a really strange feeling. I'm glad that was over with, but it was just one tear on, I believe, my left side. And then yeah, luckily that was all, and it was because of baby B, our son, coming out. So after they stitched me up, they wheeled me back to the room. My husband was actually able to stay with both of the babies, and I was only in the room for like 15 minutes waiting for them to come in. And I was just laying in the room, like trying to remember what had just happened. Like I had just come in for an appointment, and now I have these babies, like they're out of me already. It was just very, very wild, and very, like, I laugh and smile now, you guys, because it's so funny to me how it happened so fast. Like, it was just so crazy to me. Like, I'm like, all I wanted to do was like come to the doctor, leaving at Starbucks, and go home and finish working. And now I have 2 babies, and I'm stuck here for 2 days. So yeah, I mean, it was just a whirlwind, and I honestly shouldn't have expected anything less, because birth is never what you think it's going to be most of the time. If it is like you think it's going to be, then you're very, very, very lucky. But I did get my vaginal birth. Everything was fine. My husband made it. The babies ended up being fine. We had one baby, our son, go to NICU for 10 days, and it was terrible, but yet it was good that he was there getting the care that he needed, just because he needed it. And we're very thankful to the hospital staff and the NICU staff especially, and everyone that really helped us like be able to come to terms with leaving the hospital without our baby. Because I said many a times on my channel in my pregnancy updates that I wanted to make it to week 36 because I wanted the best chance for no NICU, because leaving the hospital without my baby would be devastating. And then we ended up living it. Camera died, of course. I'm almost done. It was very devastating because, you know, it's just nothing that any parent really, I think, hopes for, to leave without their baby. But in the end, it all worked out fine. He came home on the day we were actually supposed to be induced. So he came home exactly 10 days later on February 1st, which is when I would have been 38 weeks. So I'm just glad that everything worked out. I'm so glad that I made it to 36 weeks though, because who knows if they both would have ended up in NICU. Like, we don't know if that would have happened if I had delivered earlier. But yeah, I mean, it's been great having both of them home. It hasn't even been super crazy like I thought it was gonna be. We're just like soaking up every moment that we can as new parents and loving both of them, and just getting to know these babies that were inside of me for so long. Yeah, it's just been absolutely amazing, and we're so thankful for all of you who were here from day one of trying to conceive, like years ago, to now that we have our new babies at home with us. And honestly, I wouldn't trade either of them for anything. And yeah, so that's going to be all for this video. That is our labor and delivery story. I realize that I sound like a loon because I'm laughing so much and talking so fast, but I honestly can't even talk about it without talking like this, because it just seems so surreal to me that this even happened. It's so wild to see our journey from the beginning and see us now, because I never would have guessed we'd be where we are right now. And yeah, so I'm gonna quit babbling, you guys, because that's all I do at the end of a video, which is babble. But I would love you guys to subscribe if you are new. If you even made it this far in the video, congratulations for listening to me this long. I do have a postpartum update coming out. You will get to meet the babies on camera, I promise. Right now they're both sleeping, so I don't want to wake them up and bring them in here. But I do plan on vlogging in a few days with both of them, so stay tuned for the vlog with them, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!